Supercast, Supercast, don't you know that it is the Supercast? We review movies of every kind. If you don't like a film, we might change your mind. Just leave a comment and please be kind. Supercast, Supercast, Supercast.
Stop that right now. Just because you're reviewing a musical doesn't mean you need to start off with a musical.
So no singing, eh?
You sang last intro. No more singing.
Was it that bad?
Just stop it and go back what you're good at. Just announce the beginning of the episode.
Okay, here it is. Singing in the Rain on the Supercast. Yeah. And welcome back to the Supercast. This is Steve Z here, and I'm not going to be singing for you today. Sorry. But I am going to do, hopefully, a good podcast, along with my partner in crime,
who will also not be doing any singing, even though I've been in some musicals. But if you guys haven't realized, we are, first of all, I am the Superfost, the man who put the super in the Supercast. We're talking about a film that's, it's just timeless. It's just iconic. It's just awesome. It's a great film, great cast, and that, of course, is Singin' in the Rain.
Yeah, this movie, I just, every time I watch it, I'm just like, is it really that good? Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It just blows me away. It's the only movie I think of where I have a smile on my face the whole time I'm watching it. And I'm just like,
yep,
this is bliss. I wish they could just package this film into like a drink that you could just put down the hatch on a day that you're not having a great day.
It's just like visiting an old friend that you haven't seen, but you just connect with immediately, and you're just like, yes, this is perfect. So, sort of like listening to us, the Supercast, you know. We hope anyway.
Yeah. Before we get into that, we have to do our usual commercial here. So, hopefully you've been listening. And if you have, you realize that we are on Spotify.
We are.
And we're also on YouTube. And you find us by looking for Supercast, spelled with a Z, as in Steve Z. And we also have some social media stuff. So where can they find us on social media?
So you can go to Facebook, and we do have a Facebook group. Just look up Supercast, as Steve just said, with the Z. And follow us, become one of our friends. And we do put all our episodes on both our social medias, both the Spotify episode and our YouTube episodes. And so you can go on Twitter at Supercast, and we put our episodes on there. We put questions on there. If anything's happening within the film world that we think is pretty relevant or that we just want to talk about, put on there. So like and follow us and tell us what you think. Give us ideas for future episodes. We just love to interact with our fans. Gotten a lot of fan interaction over the last couple days, and just real excited, especially with the launch of our YouTube channel, which I believe Steve mentioned a second ago. So yeah, join us there and like this episode. We do, at the time of this recording, we just released a brand new episode of the new Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and that is hot off the presses on YouTube, so go check that out and enjoy it, as well as all our episodes.
Yeah. And as they say in the show business, the show will go on, and that's where we're going on now.
And here we go.
So, Singin' in the Rain is a very interesting film that really made an impact on my life. I remember I was like my junior year in college. I was taking this Alfred Hitchcock class with the man himself, Dr. Witten. And this guy, he was a legend at JSU. He was a professor there. My parents had him as a professor. I looked him up last night. He was there for 44 years before he retired.
That's amazing.
And this man loved movies, and I liked talking to him about it. So I would stick around after class a lot and just pick his brain, you know. And he turned me on to this film because I asked him, "What's your favorite movie?" And he's like, "Oh, that's so hard." Yeah. I'm like, "Okay, what movie could you watch any day of the week and you never get tired of it?" And he's like, oh, that's Singin' in the Rain. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
So I didn't own this movie, but my sister did. And I watched it whenever, I think I was on vacation with my parents. And I just stayed back in the room, watched it by myself. And about 10 minutes in, I'm like, I really like this. And toward the end of the film, in a part that I'll talk about later, I was like, I love this. I want more of this. Yeah. I'm into this genre now. Because I was always down on musicals for the most part. They were just the annoying thing my sister and my mom got into. I thought they were stupid. It just turns out I didn't find the right musicals. And thanks for Dr. Witten for turning me on those right musicals, because he gave me a whole string of movies to check out after I watched that one, and I loved it.
The ironic thing about all of this, if you guys couldn't hear me laughing, is I've done my share of musicals. In fact, Steve's watched a couple of my shows, so appreciate the support, by the way. But I do remember when you got into this movie and you called me and told me this movie is amazing. And I remember watching this. I had never actually seen this movie. And when I moved in with you in college, you showed me this film. And like you, I became obsessed with it. I thought it was great. I thought I wanted to be Donald O'Connor's character immediately, just because he is just... and I will gush over him throughout this show, so I do apologize if you don't like Donald O'Connor, but what are you listening to this for if you don't?
I don't know. How could you not like him?
I know.
There's something wrong with you if you do not like this.
But to me, he steals this movie from everybody. But yeah, this movie is just, like I said a minute ago, it's so refreshing. It's so amazing. And there's a lot to talk about within this film. So this is not going to be, we're not going to pick this movie apart as far as plot goes necessarily. Because again, it's a musical, and the plot, I can tell you from experience, the plot usually matters very little within a musical. It's more about the performance. It's more about the spectacle, and boy, there's a lot of spectacle with this.
So let's talk about the story a little bit. So the setting of this film is late 1920s, as basically the Hollywood is abuzz because there's this new thing out there, talking pictures. Meanwhile, you have Dawn Lockwood and Lena Lamont, played by Gene Kelly and Gene Hagen. They are the big time stars of the silent era, and they're on their way to premiere, and it's a great show. Everybody loves it, but this whole talking picture thing, it's going to throw these two off, because Lena, if you just hear her talk, oh my gosh. And that's really one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, is she doesn't say anything for the first 20 minutes. And then after the premiere, she's like, why can I do a speech?
Diggity kids, it's a smash. Hey, Mr. Simpson? Don, Lena, you were gorgeous.
Yeah, Lena, you look pretty good for a girl.
For heaven's sake, what's the big idea? Can't I go get a word in edgewise? After all, they're my public too.
Lena, the publicity department, Rod here, thought it would be much better if Don made all the speeches for the team.
Why?
Lena, you're a beautiful woman. Audiences think you've got a voice to match. The studio's got to keep their stars from looking ridiculous at any cost.
No one's got that much money.
What's wrong with the way I talk? What's the big idea? Am I dumb or something?
And I just love that. And from there, it's basically the whole movie is about them trying to adjust to this new life. It doesn't go over too well. The movie they're making, The Dancing Cavalier, or actually it's not The Dancing Cavalier, it's The Dueling Cavalier at this point. It's a bomb, because the sound's not being recorded correctly, the acting's bad, it's just a disaster. This is going to ruin their careers. But that's when they have the bright idea, let's make it into a musical, because Don Lockwood used to be a vaudeville guy, so he can pull it off. Only problem is Lena, she might not be able to.
We do want to talk about the cast other than Donald O'Connor. I won't fanboy just about him, but let's run down the cast for the people that maybe aren't familiar with this show.
Okay, so I think the man you got to start off with, and he's also the co-director of the film, Gene Kelly, who is, he's probably one of the most talented men that has ever done on the screen, because he's the triple threat. He can act, he can dance, and he can sing. And to me, the biggest one of all of these is the dancing. And that's what
big time
really drew me to this film, is I had never seen anybody move like this. And even more important than that, and this shows you how his vision as a director, I've never seen a dance shot like this before. And that's what really pulled me into this film, because I'm studying it, how it's shot, and I'm just enthralled by it. Because up until this point, like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of musicals, because I think of musicals, I think of a lot of cutting and stuff during these dance sequences. They do not cut in these dance sequences. They let the performers perform, and the camera's just dancing along with them. And it's really thrilling to watch. It just kind of brings you in, especially... I'll get into him later, but there's a reason why he wanted Donald O'Connor in this film, because that man can dance his pants off too. So
big time.
It's just great. So Gene Kelly directs this along with Stanley Donen, who they teamed up on a few, and this is their biggest collaboration. Donen later on, the most famous movie I know he did outside of this is Charade.
Right.
It's pretty good. But Gene Kelly, as I said, he's a man, he's a talent, and I really like watching him perform. He's got such charisma. Yeah. He's great with the line delivery. He can do comedy. He can actually show in this film that he can show disappointment and some sadness. And I just really love him in this film, and you could not make this film without him. It does not work.
Gene Kelly, I mentioned Donald O'Connor is my favorite, and he still is. I echo everything you just said, because I think Gene Kelly is the reason this movie is why we're talking about it even now. I think this man had incredible vision. I think this man had incredible talent, as you mentioned, both as a singer, as a dancer, and as a director. So just triple threat all the way, as you mentioned. And he directed some other stuff. In fact, one of my favorite musicals of all time that I was also part of, Hello Dolly. He directed that with some great talent in that. Barbra Streisand and Michael Crawford, and just a really talented guy. And with this movie, it's such a spectacle. And I mean, we're probably going to use that word a lot, and I do apologize. But I think that's one of the things about this film. As you mentioned, there's not a lot of cuts. It's almost like watching a live Broadway show in the way he shoots this. But every scene is its own show, in my opinion. It's like its own production. And that's to, again, the credit of the directors, and especially with Gene Kelly. I think he knew what he wanted with this picture and the style of it, and it just moves so briskly. I mean, that's the thing about his musicals. The pacing is just really, really tight and really good, and there's no wasted minute. You're not bored. You're not going, okay, when is this thing going over with? Because it's just so much going on. And one of the biggest examples, which the whole show's a great example, but one of the biggest examples is Make 'Em Laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, that scene goes by quickly. Like, you almost want to rewind it just to watch it, because you just feel like there's just so much going on. And to Gene Kelly's credit, to Donald O'Connor's credit, it's just a blast to watch.
Yeah, and I'm glad you wrote the pacing there. It's kind of like they just wanted you to, I don't know, they suck you in with each song. And for me, I was watching this last night, and I kept wanting to go use the restroom, and I would not stop the film to go do it, because I'm just like, this is happening next. I gotta watch this. So I was all in it. Every time I watch it, I am. And it, even in the dialogue, I would say, it still keeps that snappiness, which you get in a lot of these older films. Yep. Everybody's really witty. They're moving along. We'll get into the story a little bit later. Apparently, we just kind of like forget that for now.
Yeah. But like I said, it doesn't matter as much, but yeah, we'll definitely talk about it.
All right, so we've talked about Don a lot, but I guess we've got to talk about his best friend in the film. We've mentioned him several times. Donald O'Connor as Cosmo Brown. And Cosmo is kind of like, he's Don's sidekick. They grew up together, they're best friends, and he's pretty much the guy that's always given the one-liners. He's got the best lines in the film, but he's also, as I said, this man is a very talented dancer, and that's why Gene Kelly really wanted him in the film, because he wanted to dance with somebody like this on the screen together.
It reminds me a lot of Danny Kaye and what he did with Ben Crosby, like in White Christmas and a couple other things.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of Danny Kaye. I think Danny Kaye was a tremendous talent, and I think him and Donald O'Connor are very similar, and I have a lot of aspiration for them. The difference with me as a stage performer is I can't dance worth crap. So, I could never hold a candle to either one of those fellas. I can do comedy and that kind of thing, but as far as dancing, those two guys are tremendous, and they're just in tremendous shape. And like I said, I mentioned a minute ago, Make 'Em Laugh, which is my favorite song in the entire thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really good example of Donald O'Connor's talent, and then the direction and the shot, because everything is just, there's not a wasted frame in that entire piece.
No, it's just pure insanity for 3.5 minutes.
And I love it.
The man does crazy stuff with his body. He does crazy stuff with his face.
Yes.
It's just nuts, and you could tell he's putting it all out there because he's dancing, he's throwing himself around. You could definitely see where Jackie Chan watched this and was like, "That's what I want to do with my life. I want to hurt myself on screen." But Donald O'Connor, that scene in particular, was so rough on his body that they had to check him in the hospital. And he stayed there for days afterwards because he's just so exhausted. Yeah. So like at the end of the number, when he just falls on his back and just lies there, that's him. That's legit. He's just like, I'm done.
And you kind of feel for him. You're like, I'm tired just watching him.
Yeah. You watch him basically do this weird thing with his dummy, throwing himself in the air, throwing the dummy in the air. Then he jumps through.
I love it.
Jumps off the wall, does flips. He jumps through a wall, and then he comes out and just, that's it. I'm done. Yeah, he's insane, and I like the chemistry between those two leads. I think they're great.
Yes.
And I'm glad he's in the film because he just raises every scene that he's in is that much better.
Yeah.
All right, so love interest, Debbie Reynolds as Kathy Selden. And she's a very interesting casting choice here because she was not a dancer, and now she has to dance with Gene Kelly.
No pressure.
Yeah, so she basically made herself a nervous wreck, trying to get those lessons in, doing all the rehearsing, and this is what you always want to think about women in these roles, is they're doing those dance moves, but oftentimes they're doing them in like heels and things like that. So that's pretty rough.
I think Debbie Reynolds is an excellent choice, though, because I think she's got the timing. I think she almost kind of reminds me of like a Lucille Ball kind of character. Like, she's good with the comedy, she's good with timing, and while she may not be the best dancer in the world, she fooled me. I think she does her best to keep up with those guys, with both Donald and Gene, and I think she's very charming. I think, very beautiful lady, and just very sweet, and she just comes off so sweet and so genuine and genteel, and I really love her performance in this. I think it works really well with both Donald and Gene.
Yeah, I think she's perfect casting as far as like the warmness that she brings, and this character she's playing is just somebody trying to make it. She's not a famous actress. She actually, I love the first scene where we are introduced to her, where it has, she picks up, well actually she doesn't pick him up, he just jumps into her car. Don jumps into her car and he's like trying to actually, he's pretty rough. He's trying to put the moves on her. I don't know if you noticed, she's like, he's putting his arms around her, saying some of these corny lines, and she's not having it. She's just like, you know what, I think I've heard of you. Might have seen one of your movies. Yeah. And I just really like how she gave it to him in that scene.
Yep.
But I think the thing that's very interesting about this film, and it shows you sort of the perfection that Gene Kelly was trying to seek, is he actually like came down on Debbie Reynolds so hard several times. Yeah. And there's actually one time when Fred Astaire was visiting the set, and I guess Gene Kelly's like, "Oh, Fred's here. I got to show out." And she was like messing up, so he yelled at her. She went and hid and started crying. But guess who came and saved her?
Who's that?
Fred came over and he's like, "I'll give you some lessons. I'll help you with this." And they hung out.
Good teacher.
Helped her out. I mean, pretty good teacher in that. And then later, Gene Kelly did apologize. He's like, I was so bad to her.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned him because I've heard rumors that Gene Kelly was not the nicest director to work with, that he was pretty demanding and pretty hard on people. And I have to say, as a person that's been in shows, I've heard of directors being hard on people, and I've had directors be hard on me. And I think the best ones, I'm not defending horrible behavior by any stretch of the imagination, but I think the best directors will be aggressive towards those that know they can get it out of them, because that's been my experience as a person under a director. So again, while I'm not defending Gene Kelly's horrible behavior, if he was hard on people but he knew what he wanted, I can kind of understand it to a degree.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I guess, to me, like, coming from, like, a coaching background, I think you have to handle each person differently.
Sure.
Some people you can challenge. Some people you have to coddle a little bit.
Right. Good point.
It's just a tough business making movies, and
Yep.
I'm sure he was stressed out because
It is.
To me, I think they wanted to make this the best musical ever. I mean, we've been talking about it. Every dance number is kind of like trying to blow off the other dance number in the film. It's just like, how can we top this? Okay, let's do this in this one. And I think a real magical scene happens about halfway through the movie, and that's where the three actors, the three leads, actually do a dance number together. Good Morning. It makes you feel great watching this. Yeah.
Oh, I love that scene.
So
Another fantastic
She definitely
scene.
does represent, and I give her tons of credit. The woman said the hardest thing she's ever done is doing Singing in the Rain and childbirth. So, pretty stuff there.
Hey, I think it'll work. It's a cinch. You know, it may be crazy, but we're gonna do it. The Dueling Cavalier is now a musical. Hot dog!
Hallelujah!
Whoopee! Fellas, I feel this is my lucky day, March 23rd.
Oh, no, your lucky day is the 24th.
What do you mean the 24th?
It's 1:30 already. It's morning.
Yes, and what a lovely morning.
Hey, we can't make this a musical.
What do you mean?
Lena.
Lena's an interesting character, isn't she? It's sort of like a cartoon. It's just like kind of like a Betty Boop kind of thing is what it kind of reminded me of when you hear her talk a little bit. Very, very good representation of the kind of actress of the time. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Jean Hagen, and she's actually the only one to get an Oscar nomination from this film. She creates the conflict in the movie because if you're gonna have a villain in a comedy like this, a musical, they can't be like a mustache twirling guy. In this case, she's kind of like a diva. She wants to be treated well, and she even strong arms like the head of the studio to do what she wants. She's gonna ruin Kathy's career. She's very funny in some scenes because she's so oblivious to stuff, especially when they're doing the microphone and they've like sewing it on there. I think that's a great scene. She's moving her head, and it's kind of funny seeing this sort of actress that was big because of her look. But then when it comes to her actually talking and singing those things that you need to make it in talking pictures, she just doesn't have it.
And I think it's interesting because, we all take it for granted talking pictures because, even as old as we are, that's all we've ever known. And so when you kind of look at this time period that this movie represents, and you talk about characters, and there was probably actors back in the day that did have this issue where they looked okay, but if you heard them talk, it would just be like, oh, wow, And you could almost say that this lady could be a femme fatale in like a noir film if she wasn't so funny.
Yeah.
It's kind of what it made me think of a little bit.
A little bit. She's got that look anyway.
Yeah.
I think like a scene that really highlights this is when they're pantomiming and Dawn has just found out that Lena had Kathy's fired because she threw cake at her and everything. And it's just they're acting and they're just pantomiming everything, but it's just great to see these two actors act in this way, because it's actors acting as actors.
Oh yeah,
acting. It's just a lot of stuff going on there, and I love seeing that.
Very meta.
But it's great. I think she does a great job. It's kind of funny that, you know, Debbie Reynolds is supposed to be like basically recording her voice and dubbing all her lines, and it's actually Gene Hagen dubs one of her lines later on.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, because they're like, we don't think your voice sounds really good on this. Let's let Gene say it, because obviously this actress does not talk like this in real life.
Right.
This was actually like I think she like prepared this voice for something else, some other role, and she brought it out for this one, and she's just great because she's one of those villains that you love to hate.
See, and that's another thing about this film that I love, is that it really just shows what being an actor is all about. And, you know, you saw a character like this in anything else, and you might think, well, that actress is who this character is. And that wasn't the case. You know, this lady was playing a character, but then she was probably the complete opposite in real life as far as a person. And I think that's always fun to know about, you know, the behind the scenes kind of thing and who the people really are.
Yeah, definitely. It's just interesting to see how, I don't know, just a character like this, who's basically the villain, but you still like every scene they're in because they create conflict, but also they make you laugh. Speaking of which, let's move on to the big musical numbers.
Yes.
We've already talked about make them laugh a good bit. Any other big numbers that you want to talk about?
Well, we got to talk about the title number, and there's a lot to talk about with this. First of all, again, shot really, really well. It's obviously raining, or at least pseudo-rain. But I think the big story, and you probably know this even if you haven't seen the movie, when Gene Kelly filmed this scene, he had the flu.
Yeah.
He wasn't just like the sniffles. He was sick.
103-degree temperature.
I have worked with strep throat. I worked at the Staples with strep throat one time and felt like death. There is no way you could have gotten me on a stage to dance and sing a song in that condition. So, all the crap you could give Gene Kelly for his directing and maybe his rude behavior, I got to give mad respect for this, because I mean, you know, that is not easy to do.
No. And I agree with you. This is the big highlight of the film for a lot of people.
Yes.
I'm not going to say it's my highlight, but I do think it's a very important number in the film, because if you're not familiar with like the musicals of this era, oftentimes the musical numbers have very little to do with the narrative. They're kind of like a little sideshow here. And then now let's get back to the story. But this one actually relates to the plot, because we have Don. He's had it pretty rough because he just found out that The Dueling Cavalier is a crap film and it's probably going to ruin his career. But he and Cosmo and Kathy have come up with a solution. They're going to make it into a musical. So, hey, it's raining, but he's optimistic, and he has to sing about it in the rain. And it's a great scene. It's classic. There's a reason why it's been parodied and shown on. I mean, like, people that haven't even seen this film have seen this scene.
Right, and again, like I said, you know, you can say what you want about Gene Kelly, but I think you'd be an idiot not to give him respect, at least for this scene and what he does for this scene. And it's just iconic, like you said. I mean, it's just fantastic.
Other two ones that I think are pretty big time is the ones that he dances with Donald O'Connor, the old Moses Supposes song. That I don't know, that number is just chaotic.
You got that right.
Yeah, the setup for it, if you don't remember, is they're taking diction classes, and Don has to do all these weird tongue twisters. And then here comes Cosmo. Cosmo's gonna come. We gotta mess this whole thing up, because he's just a dash of chaos into there. So before you know it, they're dancing on the desks and using like the curtains as props. They're dancing everywhere. It's just lovely to see. I love this number.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like you said, it's very chaotic. And when I was watching this myself, I was like, man, this would be really tough to learn, because like you said, there's a lot of tongue twisters and everything. I mean, as much as the others like make them laugh with all the physicality kind of thing. Having to keep stuff straight in your head and then sing and dance and all that, God, you got to give mad respect for these guys to keep all that straight and make it look as great as it did.
Oh yeah, it's flawless. It's probably one of the best, like, two men tap dancing in a film.
Oh man, yeah.
Sorry, Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, but that one, and then the other big one where we've mentioned it earlier, the Good Morning number.
Oh yes,
with all three of them.
Yes.
And this is, I guess, is the thing that Gene Kelly was going through at the time, where he liked to use props a lot as comedic.
Yeah.
And we got that randomly. They're using rain jackets as instruments and whatever else, doing Hawaiian dance. It's all over the place, but it's a lot of fun to watch.
Like some of these other songs, I think Good Morning is just one of those songs when you hear it, it just makes you feel good. I'm not a morning person. My wife is, and she can get up and be happy. But if I got up to this song, I think I would instantly be happy just because it's such a feel-good song. And Donald O'Connor and Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds just really do a good job in this song. And I just think that they're really awesome in this part. And like I said, it just makes me happy to hear them sing the song and dance to it. I think it's really awesome.
Definitely. And I think the biggest one, the showstopper of them all, has to be the Broadway Melody Ballet. This was the scene I mentioned earlier in the episode.
Yes.
That made me fall in love with this movie and make it. It made me really appreciate musicals and what you could do in a musical, because the camera work, the colors, the choreography, everything is just top notch. It's like, how did they even come up with that? I mean, who sat down and said, "Okay, this is what I'm imagining. He's going to be surrounded by this thing that looks like a bunch of lights, and there's going to be people wearing all sorts of colors everywhere." And randomly, halfway through it, they have this dream sequence where they're on this blue and pink field, and she's got this big drape that's going along with wind. It's just insane. It's just it's amazing.
I agree with you 100%. I don't know where you could even begin to come up with something like that. My only guess is some sort of fever dream, like you see it in your head, and then you just wake up and you just somehow remember it, and then you put it on paper or whatever, and then you film it or you produce it, and that's the only way I think you could come up with something like that, because it is just amazing. And I agree with you. I think it's I've used this word once already, or maybe even a couple times, but it's just such a spectacle, but in a very good way. And I think, like you said, if you ever want to show people what a big time musical is all about and why they can be so awesome, this number right here is what you show.
Yeah, it's what made, as I said, it's what made me the fan that I am, and it just blew my mind, and it still does. I just sit down and I'm like, how did they do this? I just cannot think about how many hours it took to come up with this stuff and all the practice and everything. And it really makes you feel good, just like this whole movie. And I think it's an interesting number because it's prolonged and it tells its own story. And it's pretty cool. Like the movie could have just been this, and I would have loved it.
You know, we did a previous episode about a movie about a subject that you knew with basketball, and now we're doing a movie about a subject that I know with musicals, and it's the same thing. I mean, you watch this movie, and even if you're not the biggest fan like you are, I think this movie does a really good job of making you really like musicals and understand why people like myself that love to be in them and love to watch them myself as a fan, because they're just so much fun. They have a lot of energy, and the writing and the directing and just overall production style of this film particularly is really top notch, just super top notch. And I mean, I know I've fanboyed it over and over again, but you can't help but not, right?
Yeah, I'm eventually gonna have to bring up a few critiques, and I'm gonna have to really nitpick, because
go ahead.
I can't stop raving about this film. And I guess there's one other person we should probably mention in with this number. She eventually becomes a big time leading lady after this. but it's Sid Charisse as...
Yes.
She's just called the dancer. But she's the love interest of... I guess it's supposed to be Don, or is it just some other random dude in this ballet? And she's in with like a gangster type guy.
Yeah.
And apparently that one dance she does when she's first introduced wearing the green dress, it apparently got censored because there's like there's one cut in there. I didn't catch it, but I was reading about it. But there was a cut where they were basically, the censor said, no, this looks too much like something that you do in a bedroom, and we don't like this in a movie. We cannot show this. So it got cut. It's just kind of amazing that it's just somebody dancing could have that effect where they're like, no, this is too much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how much talent there is in this film, because until you mentioned her name, I was like, who's he talking about? And then when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, she's great in this too. I mean, there's just so much talent, wall-to-wall talent in here, and I agree. I think she's really, really good, and that's interesting that I'd never heard about the censoring thing before. That's something I didn't even know about this picture.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've already mentioned it. The to me, highlight of the whole film, because it just becomes a dream, is that part where they're having that dance together, and it's just something that's kind of etched in my brain. But I guess this is where we have to get into the critiques.
Okay, so I have stretched my mind to think of stuff. I mean, I don't know, maybe because there's just a lot going on and there's a lot to follow, but I don't know that I would call it a critique in this, because there's just so much good to follow, and I don't think there's wasted minutes. So I'm going to defer to you, man. Give us some of your critiques, and maybe I'll agree or disagree with you.
Okay, so to make these critiques...
Let's hear them.
I have to pretend I'm a totally different person, because this is just somebody would say this. So I could hear somebody saying, the musical numbers, they don't have anything to do with the story. They're just there. They're dumb. Yeah. I also could hear people say, what about that story? Who cares about the story? It's kind of stupid.
Yeah.
I could also hear people say that the ballet, it just detracts too much from the main plot. It's just like, they just did this random ballet for 15 minutes on the Ringer show. It's picky nits. It's nitpicking. Because to me, this movie is a 10 out of 10. It's everything we've been talking about. The lighting, the directing, the dancing, the acting, the singing. It's all cranked up to 11. And I just can't finish saying good stuff about this. I could not bring up a negative, because to me it's almost a perfect film, if there is such a thing.
My two responses to those negatives and to those people that would say those things, if you're going to be critical of anything in this film, it's just because out of pure jealousy. That's all it is. Because there was a time, even when I did like musicals, there was a time I didn't like the dancing type, because I'm a terrible dancer. And I'm just jealous of people that can actually dance. But I got over that, because I'm not going to be that insecure and be like, oh, I can't watch this movie because it's got great dancing in it and I can't do great dancing. Because it does have great dancing in it. I mean, it has great dancing, great singing, great all that kind of stuff. So anybody that critiques this film in any sort of negative way, in my opinion, is just jealous. And your arguments are invalid, in my opinion. I'm sorry to say that, and I don't mean to be that cruel on this show, because I don't want to disinvalid anybody's opinion. But I honestly think that's the truth.
Yeah, the film may not be for you, if that's the case.
That's true.
And I guess I would say that even if you haven't watched musicals, it's not your thing, this is a good one to check out, because I could see somebody that's just into sports getting into this, just because Gene Kelly, he's a specimen. The dude is very physical with his acting, with his dancing. Every movement he makes, whether he's dancing or not, it is planned out. And I think that's very much like an actor. I mean, an athlete, the way they would do that. But also, I think if you're into like martial arts films or something like that, I think this is very akin to a martial arts film as far as the way it's shot and just the big spectacle.
Well, this is home for me. I mean, theater's home for me, and musical theater specifically is something that I just really love to talk about and really love to participate in. So this movie ticks all of those boxes, and I really appreciate you wanting to talk about this film, because it really does my heart good. And rewatching it and experiencing, because that's what this film is too. It's an experience. It just makes you feel good, like we said at the top of the show. And it's just a fun film, and I can't give it any more praise than we've already given it.
10 out of 10. It's wonderful. Into that sentence. So, as we're finishing up the show,
Yes.
we once again want to remind you guys to check out our social media. Supercast with a Z. Find us on Facebook group, and also on Twitter. All our shows are on YouTube and on Spotify. Got a lot of stuff going on. And in the near future, we will be hitting up some new episodes as we're closing out the summer and starting, for me, the school year. We have 2 interesting flicks on the agenda. Aliens, a big-time Hollywood blockbuster from 1986. It's just a ride and a half. It's got chills, it's got thrills, it's got all that stuff. And we also have a classic movie that turned 40 this year.
Did.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Look forward to talking about both of those films and rewatching those films. So like Steve said, just enjoy this film. I hope if you have never seen this film, go watch it. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll really enjoy it. If it's been a while since you've seen this movie, get reacquainted. You'll have a lot of fun. And watch those films that we just mentioned, because we're going to talk about those next time. Great episode today. I had really a lot of fun talking about this film with you, Steve.
It was a lot of fun, and we thank you all for joining us and listening to it. And check us out again next time on the Supercast.